My name's Amber, and today I'm going to teach you about filling a medication planner. So, before we get started, what you're going to want to do first is gather up all of your medications. And you don't have to make it super fancy, but I like to fill a chart out of how and when to take the medications. It doesn't need to be anything fancy, it can just be on a piece of paper. If you take it with food, without food, and what time of day. Maybe you have morning and evening meds and that's all. Maybe you have some that you take at bedtime. Maybe you have them broken up in the day with breakfast, lunch, dinner, and bedtime. So I just write it all out on a piece of paper, and then I'm going to gather up all my medications, and I'm going to look at the instructions. On your medication bottle, it will say the name of the medication and how you take it. So this one, for example, says take 1 tablet by mouth every day. If it doesn't specify in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, if it doesn't specify any of that, then there's kind of wiggle room. You can take it when you choose to. For me and my son that I organize meds for, I have anything that doesn't have to be taken at a certain time, I have him take in the morning because that's what we find easiest. We remember in the morning best. So gather up all your medications and read all the instructions, and then just mark down. You don't have to write these ones out if you don't take them. So for my son, for example, he just takes them in the morning, and I know there aren't any food restrictions on his, so he takes them all in the morning with food. So for him, once I've gathered that information and I've filled it out on here, I can kind of see, okay, well, that's probably what kind of Mediset or medication box he will need. So we have his like this, and sorry, we're missing a couple of days because he went out of town, but we got the one for a month, and we just put all of his medications, he takes them one time in the morning, and we just fill each little container with the meds he takes in the morning. He can just pop it out, take the meds, and be done for the day. I fill this for him, so I have to go through and read all of the instructions on his meds, and most of his are pretty straightforward. You just take one in the morning, right? But there are some, like this one, that you have to take 1.5 pill a day. So you have to read the instructions really carefully and find out how many and what dose you take, but it'll say on there. So I do have to take one of his pills, and you'll see if it's a pill that they want you to split, it will be scored, which is this tiny little bump in the middle, and that's the line that's going to be easiest to cut it in half. And then you can take one of these. This is a little pill cutter. Super easy. You just pop the pill in, slice it down, but you want to try to line that line up in the middle, right where the blade that's on this side will go, and then you can just split it. And then you've got your 2 halves cut really easily into 2 little halves. So for him, I would put 1 plus 1/2 in each day. So 1.5 of those in each day. The other thing you want to make sure you're kind of thinking about is not all meds. Like sometimes doctors will ask you to take a med that doesn't come in a prescription, that you have to buy over the counter, but they want you to take regularly. So this, for example, is a generic Allegra. Generally, you can take the generic of whatever if you choose to, but talk to your doctor about that. These instructions are going to be found back here. A lot of the times the doctors will just have you take it just same as the instructions give, but make sure you know. Sometimes if they give you different instructions, they'll send you home with a paper that says how to take it. And but same here, for this particular one, there was no different instructions. We just take as directed on the bottle, which is 1 every morning. So same thing, nothing has to be cut or anything, but we just take one of these and add it to that same day that he's taking. So that's what we do for his meds. And then the other thing you kind of want to watch for, or think about, I guess, is sometimes the meds aren't pills, right? Sometimes you can have sprays or creams or inhalers. So for those, we tend to keep them in a little bowl right next to, we keep the Mediset right on the counter in the kitchen, where it's seen and easy to remember. And then we have a little bowl that we keep these in right next to it, so he knows it's just part of the routine. So I think the easier you make it for yourself to have it be part of your routine, the better. So you can come, you can grab your pill bottle, you can use your inhaler or your nose spray, and then you're done. So the only time you really have to put a lot of thought into it is the once a month, if you choose a monthly med planner, the once a month that you're filling it. So the other thing that I had mentioned is food or not food or without food, and you'll find those instructions on the other side of the bottle. Sometimes they're in colored stickers that go down this way, and sometimes they print out. It just depends on your pharmacy, but it'll say do not take with other medications, do not take with food, take exactly as directed, don't drive, do drive, anything like that. It'll usually say how many refills you have too. It's always a good idea, however many refills you have, and on or after the day that you refill it will be found on the side of your bottle. And it's a good idea to kind of put maybe a notification in your phone, a note up on your fridge, whatever works for you to remember, whatever you use as a technique to remember. And make sure you let the pharmacy know, because the pharmacy usually needs some time to fill it. You need some time to be able to get to the pharmacy when you need more. And sometimes doctors have to send in a refill or a prior authorization or any of that paperwork that goes along with filling medication. So you also want to be aware of those things and try to schedule those. The other technique that would be good to use is when you have medications that are bedtime, like melatonin, for example, is an over-the-counter bedtime medication. If you have a medication planner, I'll show you a few different kinds here in a minute, but I don't have one that has a bedtime square. You can get one that has the bedtime square, in which case you could just put one of these in there. But if you don't, if you just have this monthly one because you take all your meds in the morning, you don't need to get a whole nother one just for the bedtime one. You can just keep this bottle by the bed if that works for you. And then it can help you remember by the bathroom sink where you brush your teeth, or by your bed, and then it's right there. If you prefer having it broken up differently, that's fine. You can get a med planner like this. This is just an AM and PM, sorry, it's this way, but AM and PM med planner. So if you take some things in the morning and some things around dinner, then this would be a good one for you. And you can just open this and you fill it with the meds that you fill out on this list when you're making them. So if you fill out this list, you can say, okay, I take an Allegra in the morning with food, I take a metformin in the afternoon with food, and maybe you take a Synthroid at night. You take that in the morning, but for the example, you take a Synthroid at night without food. You would mark that here, and then when you go to fill your planner, you can just look, okay, I opened Sunday morning, so every morning I put this, and this med in there, and then close it. Open your PM square and see what you marked here. Okay, in the night, I take this, and this, and you open that, fill it, put it away. I find it easier to use this and only think of the one day that I have open on my med planner. It gets a little tricky. I know sometimes people will, open their med jar and then try to drop it in. And if you're filling one like this monthly one, that might work, because if you're taking the same thing every morning, when it gets broken up into multiple parts of the day, I find it a lot easier just to open one and have a list. And maybe every morning you take the same thing, and you could open every mornings and then close it, flip it, and do the same thing for every evenings. That would work too. If you have midday meds and bedtime meds, I would suggest a med planner that had those squares. We obviously prefer the ones that can come out. Oh well, this isn't going to want to come out. That can come out like this. So this one just pops right out like that. So if I'm traveling or going somewhere, I don't have to think about it. I just take the day. Okay, I'm going these 2 days. I'm going to take these 2 boxes, and they're already there. And you don't have to take all the medications. That's what we like about all of these. You can see that my son went out of town last weekend, so he's got these in his bag from the meds that he took that weekend. The other little trick that I've learned is when you've got or meds that you take without food, you can use one of these to distribute all your meds that you take with food. And I like to have a separate one for without food. Again, it can be any kind. It doesn't have to look like this. But I have a medication that I take in the middle of the day without food, so I need to take it between lunch and dinner. So it's easy for me to toss this in my bag. And then I have an alarm that goes off on my phone that says, oh, it's been 2 hours since you've eaten, take your med. And so I can just grab this out of my bag, and I've got my middle of the day med that I have to take without food on me and ready. I don't have to think too much about it. Just an alarm on my phone, and here it is. So those are kind of the tips and tricks that I find helpful to make sure we're taking our meds every day. Having them divvied up for the whole month and only having to think about it once a month is very helpful for my son. Keeping his other medications next to that so he remembers those every day. We keep the melatonin by the bedside. I keep it by the bedside. He keeps it in his bathroom by the sink for when he brushes. A separate med container for meds that you take without foods. And then just finding which med works, med planner, which one works for you. Or is it easiest for you to have just morning and night? Do you need once a month? Do you need the 4 square one that can divvy up 4 times a day? So again, this little list right here is going to come in handy if you sit down and you go through all your med bottles and you look at the instructions, how to take them, which is found on the back, the instructions of when and what they are to take, and you make this little list. And then sometimes, I just know my sons, but at first we kept this. I had it taped to the inside of the medicine cabinet, and we kept this, and it was every morning, this is what goes into his med box, and we kept that until we had it memorized, and that made it a lot easier to know what we were doing. So those would be my suggestions and the best way that I have found for filling a medication planner. Thank you.